Hello everyone and welcome to Soul GPS, where we learn to take our lives back in our hands after narcissistic abuse. And today I wanted to talk to you about projection, which I think is a very important topic to discuss in the context of narcissistic abuse as well as post-narcissistic abuse and what happens in our recovery process. So what is projection? A projection is or occurs when we take our values, our perspective, our point of view, our way of looking at things and project it onto the world, believing that everyone else thinks the way that we do. That's what it is in a nutshell. Now, the narcissist does that in all of his or her relationship. Their point of view, their way of looking at the world is quite constricted because it operates from a very specific core, emotionally charged, mentally charged, narrow place, so to speak. They cannot empathize. They do not have conscience, which means that they are absolutely unable to put themselves in the mind of another. In this case, if you have a relationship with them in your shoes, they can't walk in other people's shoes. It's impossible. All they know is their own hurt, their own pain. They know their sense of entitlement. They have a multitude of arguments to back up their sense of being number one most important person in the world. And even though they're able to fake that and feign their sense of understanding where it is you might be coming from, it is all an act that they have learned since childhood, most likely, which was to be able to garner the resources, the supply, the attention, whatever it is that they need in order to advance themselves in the world or advance their agendas, which basically takes into consideration the philosophy of ends justify the means, which means that they have a goal in mind, they're going to get there no matter what. And no one, including you, the person who's supposed to be their life partner, is going to stand in their way. So do not take that into consideration. So what is the narcissistic projection? Let's look at that first, and then we're going to look at the other side of the projection spectrum, which is the projection that we, the empaths, the codependents, even the healthy people, who fall into the trap of the narcissist, do employ, because we all project. It is an inevitable part of being an individual and coming from, a place of a singular perspective. But in order for us to keep a healthy sense of balance, healthy sense of self, we need to learn to distinguish when it is appropriate to project, when it makes sense to do that, and also when it might be a good idea to set our own ideas aside and take into consideration that there might be other people who really do not think like us. And if not, then how do they think and why do they think this way and why might they be doing whatever it is that they might be doing, which really opens up our own point of view, our own perspective, and is really enriching, I think, to really understanding the totality of our world Earth experience. So they project. What do they project? They project primarily two things, without getting too much into the nitty-gritty here, but they project mainly two things. Number one is they project their pain and hurt and suffering, which is more in the subconscious, in the shame-based core of their being that's been damaged. And so what they do is this kind of operates from the subconscious part of their mind. They may not be fully aware of it, but if they have been hurt, denigrated, sexually abused, physically abused in their childhood, when they are encountering you and when they're interacting with you, somewhere in the back of their mind, somewhere in the back of their consciousness, they're going to see a part of you as a projection of the enemy. You are the enemy, right? So I think that there's a certain repetition compulsion that goes on in the mind of the narcissist, which is that they do want to there's part of them, it's a very unconscious mechanism that operates deeply within us. And there's a part of them that wants to make good on the pain, on the past, on the the injustice that had been done to them. And so they're looking to make you their savior and make you finally the projection of their ideal love, that ideal perfect relationship, which perfection is something we're going to talk about in a moment. So they do that. But of course, the bigger part of them, which is the saboteur, which is the person who is out there to literally seek and destroy, is going to take the reins and really damage the relationship. And that's going to happen sooner rather than later, generally depending on how skilled the narcissist is in hiding their true face. So the projection they're going to do is initially they're going to look at you and think like, oh my God, this person can probably create this sense of homecoming for me. They can be the person that I can, be with. And of course, they don't look at it from the reciprocal fashion, which is they're going to provide me that sense of homecoming that I seek, thinks the narcissist. And I'm going to do the same for them. And therefore, we're going to have this nice balanced dance and a beautiful relationship and live happily ever after. No. We're only looking at a half of this mechanism, this dynamic, this desire, this agenda, which is, oh, they're going to do it for me. Yay, I finally found the safe harbor for myself. I remember that happening to me with two of my most prominent relationships that were most extreme, in a sense that they were psychopathic. So that was the beginning. And that was also part one of the stage of love bombing, which is I saw that they were looking at me as their savior. I was looking for a savior too, because I haven't really been able to fully yet heal myself from that illusion. And so I was being vulnerable and they were being vulnerable too in that sense. They were like, oh my God, I feel so great around you. If you make me feel so accepted, because I am, I've in the past, my ex-boyfriends or girlfriends were treating me this or in this way. And so you feel like, which is also a way for them to train you into being the ideal partner for them. They're already setting you up with this kind of language to make you feel like this is what's acceptable. This is what I'm going to feel good. And therefore I'm going to love you and give you the attention that you need. Love, of course, in quotation marks. Versus if you don't provide this safe harbor feeling for me, I am going to punish you and you're going to be a bad girlfriend or a bad boyfriend. So all that stuff is registering in your mind as you're having your initial exchanges with the narc. Something to really remember. So anyway, so they're projecting their hopes and dreams onto you, this ideal love, which is super skewed. And that ties in with, and also with the pain. So the forthcoming part that you see that they're doing very actively is the love bombing, positive projection, their hopes and their dreams onto you, which can be super overwhelming, but it also can be quite flattering to the empath, because you feel like, wow, I matter. I get to give. Yay. It's like your subconscious is like doing somersaults of happiness, going like, yay, I can be who I am. I can give. And this person obviously needs it. So, it's like this chemical wedding that I talk about in my other videos that takes place, where you have the giver and the taker come together and create this sizzling chemistry. So, but in the back of their mind, there's a seed that's already starting to sprout, because they don't really trust anyone. They project their negative expectation onto everyone, onto the world, which is why eventually their aggressive side really takes over and the predatory side really takes over. And it can even happen especially really in the most vulnerable times, whether when you're making love, for instance, you can see an animalistic part of the person come out, or when you're feeling sad, when they ignore you, they brush you aside, they don't ask you like what's going on, how I can help you, or hugging you. Instead, they're even more sadistic and they're putting more knives in your back while you're feeling at your worst. So that's what they do, is because they themselves are projecting here their own tactics and mechanisms of control, where they would use sulking or they would use feigned vulnerability in order to get something from you. So when you cry or when you open yourself up on that level, they're either going to exploit that to put their virus into you. it's kind of like almost like a subconscious mechanism that they, you know, they do that. They have to say something. They have to just, like, they can't help themselves. It's like a scorpion who has to, you know, sting the frog. Like, they can't help themselves. Or they're going to, when you're feeling, you know, really bad, they're going to make you feel even worse because they feel like you may be manipulating them in order to get supply from them, which is what they do. So that's their form of projection. So let's talk about perfection. So the narcissist is obsessed with the idea of ideal love, the perfect relationship, which feels really good for us in the beginning because we're kind of like, it's an ego high. Ultimately, we're like, oh my God, you know, they think we're the princess, we're the prince, we're the this. And so it really gets our egos inflated. And also gets the cocktail of emotions, of course. It's like this highest of highs, you know, the dopamine, the oxytocin begin to really fire. Even though in the back of our minds, we're kind of sensing, I think, that there's something off about this, but it still feels good, but it's kind of off because it doesn't feel 100% genuine, you know, and they can kind of go on these rants of adoration that are almost like, okay, like almost enough of this already. Like I get it. You kiss the ground I walk on, but like, why? You know, you just met me. You know, why am I this perfect person for you? But yet it's very hard to question that and say those things because, especially for those of us who haven't really done the self-healing work initially, you know, before we get exposed to this form of love bombing, this form of trance induction and hypnosis, it kind of feels good, you know, we're like, wow, you know, it's like super doubly intense. And so we kind of fall for this. So, but inevitably what goes with this, the price we have to pay is that it comes with high standards. So they're going to say to us, you know, you're really hot, like keep looking so good like this, keep working out, right? Or they will say things like, oh, I love it when you really hear me out, when you listen to, when you're there for me. I love when you're cooking for me. You're so perfect. You don't question anything. You don't look through my phone, you know, which isn't something we should be doing anyway when we have a trustworthy relationship. But that's a different relationship category, right? When it comes to the narc, when you feel like you ought to look at something, you ought to look deeper because you're suspecting things might be off. Get whatever proof you need in order to satisfy your own sense of, you know, being unsure whether this person is cheating on you or doing this or that. Usually your intuition is going to guide you to do the right thing. So don't project fake sense of morality onto yourself and say, no, I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't be questioning him or her. I shouldn't be, you know, doubting them, because that's not what you do in a good relationship, right? That's not what you do in a good relationship, but this is not a healthy relationship. So you should be utilizing all the tools that you have in order to validate yourself and validate your own suspicions as to whether this person you're with is really, you know, honest with you versus not. So, right. So high standards. So you're gonna have to be this perfect person, you know, and not just that. Not only will you have to be a perfect person to keep the narcissist's attention, but you're gonna always have to keep the excitement that happens in the early honeymoon stage of the relationship up, because the moment you don't, the narcissist is going to get bored. You know, they're going to feel like, maybe they're not that ideal love. Maybe they're not, because, you know, they keep score. They keep score of everything you do. And if you do something wrong that goes against their expectation of who you are, they're going to start looking elsewhere. You know, they may already have a pipeline of backup supply from their past relationships waiting in line. And the moment you do something that they're not happy about, they're going to maybe dial up their ex and go out and, you know, spend some time with them, maybe even cheat on you. I mean, you know, they do whatever they want, because when they feel like it's justified in their minds that you have just done something terrible by, you know, overcooking the salmon, then, you know, they're dysregulated, especially the borderlines. You know, they're going to take something, make a mountain out of an anthill, as they say. So you're going to have to work really, 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 really hard if you want to keep the narcissist's attention going, or you're going to have to make a lot of money if you're a man. You know, they're going to have to feel like there's something that you do that provides them with enough value for them to stay. You know, they're that special. They're that special. So be careful about getting too drunk on that adoration. If you're feeling yourself getting intoxicated, if you're feeling yourself getting obsessed, or like this person withdraws from your sphere of influence, like they're no longer around you and they're not texting you as often, and you feel like you're walking around and thinking, you know, what's going on? What have I done? You're questioning yourself. You're this. That's a big red flag that you're dealing with someone who's hooking you into their trance. You know, that the moment that they withdraw, you feeling, it's kind of almost like watching a TV show that you get really addicted on. The moment you turn off the TV, you feel like this sense of emptiness and like there's nothing going on. But hey, the world is still going, you know? You can be doing a million things. You could be working on your hobbies. You could be exploring. But instead, you're just sitting there and thinking and wondering, why aren't they calling me? What have I done? Do they not like me anymore? And of course, that undermines our sense of value. So the adoration, the intoxicating adoration, is really sweet, feels great, but it's very destabilizing because it's fake and you know it. That's why it's fake and you know it. This is where your internal GPS is already starting to knock on your door saying, hey, be careful, be careful. But of course, we brush it aside and we ignore it because this really speaks to the incredible strength and incredible power of our core wounds and how they're calling for attention. And the moment the narcissist rips the scab off of that wound with their adoration and puts the oil over it, or the Band-Aid over it, we not only do we feel aggravated and reconnect with the core of our being, which is really ties in with our childhood, which brings in the totality of our earthly experience into the present moment through something that's called, I call it the regression reward. So they bring you back to your childhood and then they make you feel so good and so loved and paid attention to the way we didn't get it in our childhood. So it's a very, very dangerous trick that they do. And it's incredibly simple, but it's super sophisticated. That's how our psyches work. So you got to be really aware of that. But like I said, your subconscious, not subconscious, I'm sorry, your intuition, your higher self knows it. So that's why you feel unsettled. And so as they begin to withdraw, which really ties in with the devaluation stage when it starts to kick in, you know, when you're not meeting those high standards that they have projected onto you, they're going to get bored and it's going to start really nagging and tugging at your sense of self, which you have given and put in the hands of the narcissist unknowingly. Your fault isn't there. To understand these dynamics, it takes a while. It takes literature. It takes going through the experience. It takes listening a lot about this stuff, like as you are doing now by watching this video. It may take coaching, working with somebody one-on-one to really hone in on your particular core wound and understanding step by step what had happened and why you let the person break through your walls and get to the core of you. And, it takes a lot of work. But so don't blame yourself at all for having fallen into that trap. You've been programmed to do this. As I say in most of my videos, I talk about this, is you've been programmed since childhood. Your good empathic nature has been hijacked, taken advantage of, and that's how you end up, a pile on the floor, just with your guts twisted, just no idea what the hell just happened to you. But the moment that you do become aware of what happened, and you are thinking of moving forward and forming a new relationship with another person, that's when you have to be really careful and take the responsibility for the action you take moving forward. But that's another area. We're going to talk about it in another video. So now let's flip the lens onto ourselves and look at how we do the projection, because this is a mutual. This is a partnership here that takes place. Now, our projection is on that. We do both. We do positive and negative projection, but usually narcissistic relationships begin with positive projections, and we take our empathy, our good nature, especially our hope, when we all the ideas that have been formed in the early stages of a relationship with the narcissist, which is also ties in with the future thinking, when we ourselves imagine how wonderful this can be, what a great relationship we could be having with a person who gets us so much on this core level. Oh my God, like sky's the limit, right? We can do anything together. And you being the person who is, much more put together and not as dysfunctional as narcissists, because the moment you feel fulfilled, I found that within myself, that the moment I felt fulfilled and met at this core level, I had immense amounts of energy. I could do anything. I could run my business and his business at the same time. I would attain the perfect body within 2 weeks, because I would be working out and making the perfect food. I would be flying. I would be gliding above ground, because I finally felt like I was connected to another person. I needed it so much. So then naturally, when that was withdrawn and taken away, I would just crash onto the ground. I didn't feel like doing anything at all. All energy had left me. But we're able to do that because we have a certain order within ourselves. We know how we want our life to be, more or less. We know the kind of structures we want to put in place. So being able to be with another person gives us a sense of meaning, in which we're able to really much faster move forward. And that's what also makes it that much more devastating when that person turns out to be a fake, and all the investment that we have done by projecting our positive intent and believing that that person thinks the way we do, that we end up, crashing and burning. So we got to be very, very careful about this positive projection. And we don't only do that in relationships. We do that, I find it, just by going out into the world and ignoring, partly due to the mass hypnosis that's been in place for thousands of years. When we look around at the world, especially in cities, and we see the dirt and the muck and the dysfunction of our systems and how destructive they are, we somehow don't see that. We've blocked that out, and we still positively project our sense of self onto politicians, onto institutional leaders, onto people who are really, to put it bluntly, fucking us in the ass with all of their policies and shit that they do by taking our money that we pay through and generate through our own labor and creativity, and putting that towards war and, screwing us over with all sorts of things. So anyway, that's a whole other video. I actually made a video when I talk about this quite a bit. I think it's called The Narcissist's Greatest Fear, when I went on a bit of a rant there. And I probably will go on more of those rants in future videos. But we project that, and we need to be very careful, because we want people to be good. We want people to be nice. We want this world to be safe. But it isn't. I mean, there is a slice of population that's been working over time to keep us squandered, to keep our creativity under the lid. It's like I see humanity as this incredibly creative, beautiful, kind, beautiful, just we are so amazing. The things we can build, the things we can create, the art we can do, but yet there is this energy that of the opposer, right? It's like this oppositional energy that just whenever we create something, and like a movement or something beautiful springs up on the planet, it's like it gets hijacked, twisted, and then it's like, this is what happened to many to the music scene, for instance. I remember when punk rock came out, or metal, which I love listening to that kind of music, and when that music came out, and it was great for a while, and then eventually it got super commercialized and just ridiculous. Same thing happened with R&B and rap. Right? Okay, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's important. When these people were using this spoken poetry with the beat to talk about the world's injustice, and people noticed, and they were hearing truth in it, and it gained so much ground. And now look at the R&B and hip hop scene. I mean, it's turned into porn. It's freaking ridiculous. So we got to be aware of that's something that keeps happening, and there is an agenda. There is a reason for this, and there are people out there who are, like I said, working overtime to wage destruction onto our planet. It's psychopathic, it's sociopathic, it's sick, it's deranged, it's horrible. And you know, every time we go out, they're probably, we're passing by some of those people, and they're out there and they're watching and they're doing these things. So yes, you have a beautiful, good nature. And yes, we want the world to be a great place. But step one, I think, in healing, not just on an individual level, but also on a mass level, is to recognize that there's dysfunction, there's evil in this world, and it's running rampant, and we got to recognize it for what it is. I'm tying back to this quote. I just love this quote. I opened my last video with it, which is Fritz Perls' quote. He was the father of Gestalt therapy, a German psychologist, and he said, "Nothing changes until it becomes what it is." You know, and it just speaks to the trance in which we all operate. And projection is one of those trances. So we project that. So be really, 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 really aware of this. It's good when you see that in another person through a process of repeated exposure and cultivating a friendship, giving it time to see when somebody's really good-natured and good-hearted, where you can really trust them, then you can relax and you can really enjoy the exchange. But up until then, you know, just use your logic, use all the faculties that you have, your intuition, to really gauge who that person is, and try not to project positive hallucination onto them, which happens when you see things in those people that aren't there, but you want them to be there. It's like something isn't there, but we want it to be there, so we're going to stubbornly cling to that idea, like, no, this is not true, that this person is this bad. See it for what it is. Don't do negative hallucination either when you're actually don't do different kinds of projection where you you know, are projecting negative things onto them. You know, they do a little bit and then you freak out, because that too happens. And actually, I should move to the next point, to stage 2 of empathic projection, because that's kind of where this conversation is going, or this dialogue is going, which is what happens after we've been hurt, and after we walk up as a pile on the floor in our tears, with our guts twisted, feeling like, what the fuck just happened? This, like, what? You feel empty. You feel like your roots have been pulled out from the ground. You have lost your sense of self. You have lost your vision for the future. You're drowning in despair. It's horrible. I know this feeling. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse. That's why I think many people feel like they would rather just end it than go on. It feels that horrible to our psyche. So then we pick ourselves up. Some time passes. We go no contact. Our body chemistry calms down. The worst is over, so to speak. We're ready to face the world again. Somehow we regain our functions. Well, there's still negative feedback. There's still flashbacks. There's still CPTSD we're going to have to deal with, which can take a few years. For some of us who work really, really, really hard on it, it may take a few months of processing intense CPTSD. But it will take however long it takes. It doesn't matter. Don't judge yourself over the idea of how long it takes. We're all different. We all bring in different stories, different density of stories, of shit that's been piled onto us into our present day experience. So if it takes you 10 years to get through it, so be it. So be it. You're going to get such a thorough cleansing if you do it over a long period of time, that you're gonna leave no stone left unturned, as they say. You know, every corner of your inner temple is going to get a thorough cleaning, and that's great. That's great. But the CPTSD creates a form of negative projection. And the negative projection is that everyone is evil. Everyone's out there to hurt us. It's almost like borderline paranoia sets in. You know, we get super vigilant. We get very, very worried that it's going to happen again. And I want to say to you, if you're going through this, that is fine. That is okay. It's natural. It is something that was built into the mechanism of our psychology, into the mechanism of our body, even into our just structure. It's a form of self-protective mechanism, and because we lacked self-protection to begin with, because our fathers, usually it comes from that source, because our fathers weren't there to instill a sense of self-protection in us by being the protectors that they ought to have been, until we were ready to leave the nest and fly out into the world to explore it. It's almost like we're getting the lesson a little late, So our body gets all up in defense and says, I don't trust anyone. I don't know. It's fine. It is okay if you feel that way. If you feel like you want to isolate yourself from the world for a while, that's fine. Do not get social. Maybe you only find that the best way for you to be social is to be active on forums for narcissistically abused people. That's fine. I would encourage you to seek some form of contact with the outside world, to not completely cave in, because that too can prolong your sense of healing, but do it in a way that feels comfortable to you. I like what Dana says from Thrive After Abuse. She talks about Meetup, how you could go and do board games with people, maybe volunteer at a center for older people, there's no way that they can hurt you, but you can have, or not much of a likelihood, but you can have still an interaction and feel like you are doing something that's positive, that's good. You can volunteer, you can go on a cycling trip with people, where it's all about just it's really about the journey, the adventure and outdoors, as opposed to forming relationships, even though I know a lot of people are using these forms of gatherings for dating and so on, but anyway, find what's comfortable to you. Get yourself a little bit out there. Maybe spend time with animals. They're such wonderful companions. There's no narcissism in them, so it's incredibly safe. Whatever it is that makes you comfortable. But also be aware. Be aware that you're doing a negative projection for a period of time. It's a stage to pass through, and you will come out of it. Be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up over this. Be really gentle. Be really gentle with yourself. I actually talk about this quite a bit in my. I have a free SOS program that is on my. Website. I will put the link down below about really cultivating self-kindness in the process of self-healing. So, not all people are bad. There are wonderful people out there, and I want to just say real quick that I'm in a point of my journey where I've been really lucky to connect with really kind people and away from the narcissists. So I've created a little bit of a safe haven for myself. And let me tell you, being with people who are empathic and have healthy boundaries is so wonderful. I wish it to all of you. And know that if you're on the journey, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to come out. That's where you're going to go in the future stages of your healing. So what are the solutions? Oh my God, I'm doing another long video. I thought it was going to be literally 10 minutes, but so many tangents. So many things to mention. So the solution is, number one, do not vest your sense of self into the hands of another, especially if that person is a narcissist. It's hard to tell initially whether they are or not, and that's okay. So just know that it's really important for you to take your time and withhold your trust for quite a while until you're able to really, life will show you who that person is, especially when you are needing their help. You're going to see what kind of person that is. But regardless of whether they're an empath, whether they're a trustworthy person, whether you find a partner with whom you know you're going to spend the rest of your life with, still, I would not take your whole sense of self ever really and put it into the hands of another, because the moment that, I would say, even a good-natured person senses it, there's going to be a sense within them that they have power over you, and that could invoke a certain power trip dynamic that is not equal. You make yourself that much more attractive, interesting, stable, and also confident within yourself when you don't do that. When you keep your sense of self to yourself and you keep working on it, If you're still not there, keep working on it. There will be a point when you feel like you've made a quantum leap and it's going to feel amazing. So do not vest your sense of self in anyone's hands. Number two is accept yourself with all your flaws. There is no such thing as perfection. Even if you may have followed that ideology for a while, I know I have, I have found that I have had moments where I've come to like near perfection, so to speak. You know, I remember when I was standing on the podium of my college delivering the valedictory speech. You know how long that lasted, that high? Like, I don't know, 5 hours. And after that, I was already like, well, but I didn't do this and did this. I need to now reach the new goals. And I need to now get a job. And I need to now, you know, climb the corporate ladder. And I need to prove it. It's freaking endless. Get off that hamster wheel as soon as you can. We as humans are here to enjoy this process of being incarnated into our bodies and channeling our spirits into this worldly material experience, which should be fun and interesting. And you know what? So I have cellulite. So what? Does that make me a worse person? You know, so I have some extra fat on my stomach. So what? I have a mole on my cheek. So what? You know, I have big ears. So what? I have curly hair instead of straight hair. So what? Really, like, this is not important. That's so not important to... Yeah, it really stands in a way of us feeling fully and really enjoying this life experience and learning, which is what this narcissistic abuse process does. It's just, you get to learn so much about yourself and other people, about how we filter information, how we project our own sense of self onto the filters of the world. You know, how do we see ourselves? How this process of changing and growth occurs? How do we find our inner power? How do we help other people find their power? How do we set ourselves free? How can we set other people free? How can we foster greater awareness within ourselves and then help other people? You know, I mean, this is so much more interesting than worrying about how your hair looks. And number 3 is practice critical thinking. I think I'm going to make a separate video about this because this is so interesting and it's such a lost art in today's day and age, is people don't practice critical thinking, and it's not really taught I don't think it's taught in high school at all. I remember I had one class which was studied in with English in college, which dealt with critical thinking and learning about the fallacies. So I would really encourage you to do that. And some of the fallacies that I would say really come up in the relationship with the narcissist is, for instance, ambiguity. You know, how they talk in double speak, double entendres, like you're never quite sure what it is that they're saying. Instead of clarifying and speaking in plain English or whatever language that you speak in, they're going to, you know, like say these things that are just, you have to guess, you have to fill in the blanks, which puts you at a vulnerable stage, because now you're in the projection zone where you're projecting your own values and your own ideas, what it is they might be saying, which is wishful thinking mostly, because you want those things to be positive, and you know, and you end up in a pit as a result. Another one is argument for repetition. They will repeat shit over and over and over again if it doesn't make sense until you believe it. That's what propagandists use. It's one of the things that Hitler had said was, make it big, make the lie big, repeat it all the time, and sooner or later they'll believe it. Well, that's what's happening right now in American media with all the shit that they're propagandizing to you. Another one is circular reasoning, you know, where they begin an argument with the same claim they end it with, you know, the famous word salad of the narcissist. So circular reasoning. Ad hominem, where they will personally attack you to undermine you. It's no longer about the argument. Now it's all about you and how horrible you are, what a piece of shit you are. It's horrible. Another thing would be using red herring fallacy, where they're going to basically distract you with a completely different argument. Like, it started here, now you're suddenly talking about something completely else that had nothing to do with the initial argument. So that's another thing they do. Appeal to emotion. There's no logic in it. They're undermining your feelings. It's another one, and that's another fallacy to remember it. False dichotomy, black and white thinking, something that the borderline exceeds at. So learn your critical thinking skills. I will actually link a really cool website to this video so that you can scroll down the list and read them down, write them down, because when you're actually writing these titles, these fallacies, if you rewrite it literally on a piece of paper in your journal, through the art of writing it with a pen, not typing it, writing it with a pen, you're learning, you're forming even stronger neural connection in your brain, and you will remember it even better. Put it on a piece of paper, keep it in your wallet, keep it in your purse. Think about it, you know, when you're talking to anyone, or when you're watching the television, analyze these things and say, they're using this in this fallacy right now. Wow, interesting. And that puts you in a place of empowerment, self-empowerment, where you know you can count on yourself and your own logic and develop your logic, right? Develop your left brain, which is something that a lot of empaths need to do in order to forge balance in our thinking. And therefore, it's going to make you that much more balanced and more immune to the antics and undermining strategies of the narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths. I hope this video helped you. Let me know what you thought. If you need personal coaching, I am available. I love working with you guys one-on-one. All those details are on my website, and you can find me there and email me there. So thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love from Poland, which is where I still am, and encourage you to always let your inner compass guide you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.